What's up, you guys? Ross Sapp, managing editor at FightfulMMA.com. Leave us a thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube Live. Leave a comment, all that good stuff. It is a late one, 1:30 a.m. Eastern here on the East Coast. But you can listen whenever. We are on podcast platforms everywhere. Check out FightfulMMA.com. I always plug those discussion pages. It's always wild over there. We always have hundreds of comments. And tonight was a double event. We had Bellator and UFC Fight Night Lauderdale. But I can tell you guys, from an engagement perspective, UFC dominated Bellator. Oh, I don't think we had anybody engaged in the Bellator discussion, but 600 comments in UFC Fort Lauderdale. That should show you that even though Bellator brought 2 title fights and 2 former champions, the focus is still on the UFC in that regard. Let's go ahead and talk about it. This UFC show, some light notes, of course. Tuesday, 2 p.m. Eastern, we will talk about these at length. Diego Lima split decisions, Court McGee. Lima almost gave this one away, and that could have been the end of his second UFC run. He is, this is his 8th fight and his first winning streak in the UFC, but he was 6-0 on tough. Court McGee has lost 3 of 4. I think he'll hang around. I just think they won't cut him. Angela Hill's not getting cut. She took a short notice fight against Jody Esquibel. Esquibel now 0-3 in the UFC. Angela Hill needed this win. She's 3-4 in her latest UFC run, but was facing a possible 3-fight losing streak. She performed very well, ended up winning this one. Jim Miller was my favorite story of this show. Well, one of them. This guy has been around forever. I don't know how you couldn't like Jim Miller. He's an OG, man. I see that guy on the fight card, and I'm like, damn, man. I want to watch this guy fight. I want to watch him put in the work. Share a birthday as well. But, I mean, when I think the guy's only 2 years older than me, I'm like, man, what have I accomplished? He's done everything but be champion. But his fights haven't been quite fight of the night territory. He's had some good finishes, but he's been getting beaten a lot lately. He's now won 2 of his last 3. He should have beaten Jason Gonzalez, and he did. He did it in 2 minutes, 12 seconds. And if you're going to lose to Jim Miller, it's going to be rear naked choke or guillotine choke. That's how it happens. You're not going to find a lot of lightweights that have 8 first-round finishes. He's one of them. He admitted that he didn't have many more fights left in him, said that he was hoping that he could go on a Cinderella Man run. And he did it in front of his family, man. And that was really cool to see, because they played it up on the broadcast. And it was that was cool. That's what they should have done. It's a storyline. So play it up, make it as special as you possibly can be, but add this stuff to fights like that. The thrill and the agony, man. I'm all about it. Gilbert Burns taps Mike Davis in round 2. Davis was a late replacement. This is how this fight had to go. Burns had to win this fight and had to win it in dominant fashion. He's now won 4 out of 5, but anything but a finish would have been very disappointing here. Virna Jandiroba's debut was rather disappointing. Carla Esparza, former UFC champion, got the win. She's a number 9 ranked fighter. The odds were rather close here. Former UFC champion against highly touted prospect. And Jandiroba didn't have an answer for that good old American wrestling. Esparza had top control in round 1, Jandiroba in round 2. Momentum returned to Carla in round 3, but I thought that Esparza was especially good at smothering Jandiroba in guard without eating a bunch of elbows. Jandiroba ends in control, but this was not a fun one to watch. Esparza was more successful all over the place, even including in the clinch, and took this one late notice, but a lot of people thought that she was going to win. A lot of people thought she was going to dog walk Esparza. I wasn't necessarily one of them. You don't accidentally get to the levels that Carla Esparza got to. But this was Jandiroba's way into the UFC. Not great. Augusto Sakai beat, quote unquote, Andre Arlovski. What? This fight sucked, man. I can't believe that allegedly 110 strikes landed in this fight. When's the last time Andrei Arlovski has had a good performance? Even in wins, he didn't have good performances. You can go all the way back to the Brendan Schaub thing, and at least he had a couple of finishes right after that. He redeemed himself. Arlovski didn't lose this fight. He should have won, but that's not saying a lot. And now we're looking at him with 2 wins in his last 11 fights. Listen, I get it. He's at heavyweight. He's not getting knocked out. At least this go around. He hasn't been knocked out in over 2.5 years. But he was the UFC heavyweight champion 13 years ago. How much water does that hold? How much? I mean, I guess. At what point, who is paying to see this guy fight? I don't know. Why is he still around? All due respect to him, Bellator will hire him like that. That's why I'm saying, why is he still around? I don't want the man to not have a living. But this fight sucked. And all of his fights have sucked for years. Augusto Sakai, now 2-0 in the UFC, 13-1-1 total. He did not win this fight. Arlovski did, but when I say that, man, did this one blow. Takashi Sato finished Ben Saunders. Sato was going to have to beat Saunders to retain his prospect status, and Saunders was going to need to win to stay relevant anyway in the UFC. Saunders has now lost 5 of 6 and has been finished in all of them. I think it's a wrap on his second UFC run. I think Sato is worth watching because he has a lot of upside. Good finish, too. Ben Saunders isn't there, man. He is another guy that it's getting uncomfortable to watch. He was a guy for a long time. If you watched the podcast that we do, I'd always give him a chance, man. Always give him a chance because he's one of those guys. He does remind me a lot of Jim Miller and Joe Lozon and those type of fighters to where you can almost never count him out. He fights again in the UFC. Oh, I'll count him out. Just the way it is. Roosevelt Roberts defeated Thomas Gifford. This is another one. Roosevelt Roberts needed to win this. Gifford hung around in this one. That's really all you could ask of him. Roberts is a really highly touted prospect out of the Contender Series, and the company probably wanted him to emerge victorious. He did. Gifford, though, he will be back. We interviewed him on Fightful, we being James Lynch. That's one. That you can skip this one, too. I would probably watch Sandhagen versus Lineker. Now, most had this for Lineker. Sandhagen ends up earning a split decision. Worth noting, the only 2 people to beat Lineker in the last 6 years before this tested positive for EPO. Sandhagen was so much bigger than Lineker. Sandhagen looked like a big-ass he looked like a small featherweight competing at bantamweight, while Lineker looked like a normal-sized flyweight competing at bantamweight. Oh, boy. The size really helped out Sandhagen here. BlueChew.com code Fightful. The size will really help you there. Towards round 3, Lineker gets sick of it and just kind of wades in, gets caught with regularity in doing so. This was some good technical striking versus brawling. There was this filthy moment at the end where Lineker had split open Sandhagen and had a guillotine hooked on, and blood's just squirting out of Sandhagen. Ugh! There was an 8-inch height disadvantage here, but the blood was insane. Saran Zaman says, WTF, why are you accusing him of PD? Seriously unprofessional. I didn't. I said that before this fight, the only 2 people to beat John Lineker in the last 6 years popped for EPO. In fact, in my show notes, it says, well, comma, I don't think Sandhagen will pop for EPO, comma, but he won. This was a close decision. I don't hate this going to Sandhagen. He's now 4-0 in the UFC. He's got to get a big opponent now, right? Like, I don't know how you don't give him – I mean, this is a big opponent. John Lineker was a big opponent because he was that guy that I just mentioned that had only lost to guys who popped for EPO before that. And Sandhagen beat Austin Arnett, who the UFC thought a lot of, and Yuri Alcantara. And yeah, this was his first fight that wasn't a finish in the UFC. But Sandhagen's got to be ranked now. I think he's probably going to crack maybe number 10, maybe number 11. Good for him. I don't think Lineker will get hurt a lot from this either. Ian Cutelaba came into this unranked and almost took down Glover Teixeira. Cracked Teixeira midway through the first, including with a big-time knee. I love that they could do the knees in this fight because I get so sick of playing the game with the hand down and all that horse shit. Glover is able to recover briefly and land a takedown. This was easily the fight of the night at this point through the second. Both guys cracked one another, but Teixeira's experience ended up playing a huge role. This is exactly how James Lynch said it was going to play out on the live post show or the pre-show on Fightful.com. He grounded Cutelaba and submitted him. After the fight, he called out Corey Anderson. This was a high-level 205-pound fight. I've touted Ian Cutelaba before that. I think that he is still a guy that's going to make some noise. He just turned 25 in December. Glover has won 2 in a row now, and he's still hanging around in the division. Now, while this was an unranked opponent, and so was Roberson, I still think that Glover belongs in the top 15. He's won 3 of his last 4. He's won 4 of his last 6. He's still getting it done around there. Not just that, but he's finishing people. Look back at Glover Teixeira's career. Like, he's been finished a couple times, but dating back to 2013, all but one of his wins is a finish. So, yeah, somebody asked me about Leo Rush. You're on the MMA channel, homeboy. I'll talk about that on the wrestling channel maybe Sunday. Glover Teixeira keeps himself relevant. So I look at this UFC light heavyweight division, and you got to ask now, what's next for Glover Teixeira, a former title challenger? Where could he go from here? I think Dom Reyes makes a lot of sense. I think you could do that. Dom Reyes wants that title fight, but don't know about that yet. But if Reyes beats Glover, why not? Why not? Mike Perry beats down Alex Oliveira. Whew! This was fun. This was a huge win for Mike Perry. I can't even begin to tell you how big it was. Even though Alex Oliveira was coming off the loss, he is a very well-rounded fighter. I didn't think Mike Perry had much of a chance in this. And he proved me wrong. He stuck with it, man. This is the Mike Perry that we saw just bum rush the UFC in 2016 and go on that 4-1 streak. Oliveira and Perry really slugged it out. Cowboy put the paint on Perry in round 1 and had much more precise striking. But in round 2, Perry cracked Cowboy with a big punch and dropped him. Later slammed him to the mat. Perry's able to clip Oliveira with a right. And then as Oliveira was about to kind of crumble a little bit, he drove through and took him to the mat. Fantastic. There was this great knee up against the cage. Perry had a quarter Nelson, I think a 3/4 Nelson applied through the knee. It was awesome. Alex Oliveira in this fight dislocated his toe, and his corner put it back in, and he was still fighting, but he couldn't regain it, man. Perry really laid it on Oliveira and took this fight, and I would say it's the biggest win of his career because the Paul Felder fight was really close, and the Paul Felder fight was at welterweight, a weight that Felder had never competed at. and I believe it was a short notice fight. So I would argue that this would be his biggest win. After the fight, he called out Darren Till. Now, when Perry had went on that losing streak, I was like, all right, let's not do that now. Let's not do that now. But now Darren Till's on a losing streak. He's lost to Tyron Woodley, lost to Masvidal. I think it makes sense. Perry coming off of a win, Till coming off of a couple losses. Go ahead and do that. You can main event, co-main event a fight with that. I don't know what's going to be up with Darren Till because he just got caught like stealing a taxi, allegedly. Unbelievable. Greg Hardy crushed a Russian jobber. I really thought this Russian jobber would have enough experience to stop Greg Hardy. I was wrong. Greg Hardy landed a head kick, pressed forward, hurt Smokliov. That's a wrap. Greg Hardy got booed by his own hometown crowd where he trains. He's a trash human. How much more credit do I want to give him? Not a lot. How fast does Alexei Oleinik submit Greg Hardy with an Ezekiel choke? I say maybe 2 minutes. I say maybe 2 minutes. Joseph Boza mentioned Teal's number 6. Perry isn't ranked. Doesn't matter. Perry's a name. Number 10, Jack Hermanson defeated number 4, Jacare Souza. Now, Jacare Souza was promised a title fight if he won. Also, you got to remember, Anderson Silva had been promised a title fight if he'd beat Adesanya. Adesanya obviously ended up getting that. Wasn't to be. Now we got Jack Hermanson, probably as a top 5 middleweight. And we don't have Weidman, we don't have Rockhold, we don't have Jacare, and we don't have Romero in the title picture. And now Gastelum's out of it too. Hermanson had the opportunity of a lifetime competing on this show against Jacare Souza. I mean a top level opponent. The thing is, Jacare beat Weidman. He thought he beat Gastelum. He beat Brunson, and he's had performance of the nights all along the way. But Jack Hermanson stepped in after he won less than a month ago. He fought 4 weeks ago and beat David Branch. He fought 4 months ago and beat Mearshart. He's 4-0 in the UFC since Thiago Santos left the division. And I got to tell you, Thiago Santos' resume just keeps looking better and better. When Anthony Smith goes on the run that he does, when Jack Hermanson goes on the run that he does, looks pretty good. The Eric Anders fight doesn't look so great now, but hey, we'll talk about Thiago Santos when the time comes. Jack Hermanson has now won 5 of 6. He beat Souza, Branch, Mearshart, Lates, Brad Scott, and Alex Nicholson along the way. Thiago Santos stopped him. And as we see, a year and a half after that fight, Thiago Santos is about to compete for the UFC light heavyweight title against John Jones. No shame in that. Cesar Ferrara beat him. Cesar Ferrara is a very good fighter. Not top-level fighter, but a very good one who can give a lot of people trouble. Jack Hermanson played his game. And he beat Jacare Souza with top control through a lot of this. That's pretty damn impressive. Souza ripped away at the body of Hermanson and did some damage. This led to Jack shooting early in round 4. But round 5 was a lot more close. But Hermanson did it, man. Outstanding. You got to love it. You got to love what he was able to do. I look at that and I'm like, Costa, maybe. You can maybe do him and Costa. Rockhold's about to get the hell out of here. Souza's ranked number 4. I imagine Hermanson's probably jumping Costa, Weidman, and will probably land right underneath Gastelum. I would say that Hermanson ends up at rank number 4 because Gastelum will move up to number 3. Souza will move down to number 5. Rockhold will GTFO of there, and then you'll see Hermanson settle right there. And then you're going to have Hermanson in there with other big boys. You're going to have him in there with Gastelum. You're going to have him in there with Romero. You're going to have him in there with Costa, probably. The big names of the division. Just suppose it says Jack should be number 6. I disagree. Rockhold's not in that division. They should just go ahead and pull him. He's leaving. Weidman hasn't won lately, so he should be ranked above him. He should be above Souza because he just beat him. So there you go. We had Bellator too. Gaston Boyanos defeated Stolen. This was as good as it got on this show. Boyanos was an emerging name. Finished him. Frank Trigg called maybe an early end of this. Phil Davis put Liam McGeary out of his misery. This was a rematch. Couple long, rangy ground specialists. So how does it go? They keep it standing for their technical striking exhibition. This fight sucked. I interviewed Phil Davis. Go listen to it. That was fun. He's a great guy to talk to. The final round finally sees Phil Davis get aggressive and taking the fight to the ground. He does so twice and he threw some nice ground and pound, but finally got a finish, man. But when you look back at this fight, you're not going to say, oh, man, Phil Davis got that finish over Liam McGeary. If you watch this fight, you're going to go, ugh, this fight sucked. This is a rematch of their 2016 fight. I didn't see the need of running this back. Bellator runs some of the weirdest, most boring rematches back. I don't know. Now Davis has finishes in consecutive years. That is impressive. That is not something that exactly happens a ton for him. He got 2 in one night at one point, but I don't think he's done that since like 2009, 2010. McGeary just tapped anyway before the rear naked choke was applied. Ben Henderson, I interviewed him too. Go check it out. Outpointed Adam Piccolotti. A lot of people thought this one was close. Henderson opens with leg kicks, as is tradition. Piccolotti's able to close the distance, drag Henderson down, and apply an unsuccessful rear naked choke. Piccolotti controlled the duration of round 1 and easily took it, but round 2 was the opposite. Henderson pressed forward, took Piccolotti down, then later took the back. Henderson always finds himself in those awkward grappling positions. Like when he was in the splits punching somebody. Weird. And Piccolotti almost pulled off a hammerlock, but got dumped by Henderson. Piccolotti took control and tried to ride out the round, but Henderson got on top, landed a few strikes, and that was enough to get the win. You can't expect a big, exciting fight out of Ben Henderson either, man. He's won 3 in a row, though. Bellator's got to be happy about that. He's had like 6 straight fights that have either been really close or wins, and he went to split with Michael Chandler and Patricki. Do you want him back in the title picture at this point, or do you want him second from the bottom on a show like this? I think it's the latter. I don't think you want Ben Henderson in the title picture right now, especially if your title fights are going to get the reputation of being boring fights. I'm fine with it being a split decision. Ali Malay McFarland stopped Veda Ortega. This was not a great fight either. McFarland pressed forward, dropped down for submissions. First an R-bar, then an E-bar, but Ortega worked to her feet and landed knees and strikes in the clinch. Ortega stuffs a takedown to end the round, but McFarland got inside and took down Ortega in the next round, rests in the guard. Ortega was countering where she could, but McFarland kept cutting her off with long strikes and leg kicks. But then in round 3, McFarland took down Ortega and threw a filthy elbow. I can't believe that Veda was winning on one card 2018 as I see that. I cannot believe that. That shocks me. And you can say that McFarland got lucky. There ain't nothing lucky about throwing an elbow at somebody's forehead and splitting them open, my man. And that's what happened. Ortega was split open and the ref said, no mas, no more. Not a great fight, man. But Ilima-Lei McFarland's title reign is reaching greatness, at least for Bellator. How about this? Now she is the longest reigning current Bellator champion as far as title defenses. She's held that title for a year and a half. Between amateur and pro, she's 15-0. And how about this? Her next successful title defense, she will tie Ben Askren for the most successful title defenses in Bellator history, at least consecutively. A great representative for Bellator, somebody that they want, obviously. Without a doubt, the most decorated star that they have. And they got Julia Budd, too, and they just re-signed her, and she's great. I think a lot of Julia Budd. But it's nice now that they can hold on to their champions. It's nice, but I mean, they just got to get out of the habit of running all of them back over and over and over and over again. Bellator Welterweight Championship and a Grand Prix opening round. Oh my God. Rory MacDonald and John Fitch went to a majority draw. Yep. So let's run down this one. MacDonald immediately caught Fitch with a punch, got taken down. He applied a wrist lock that ended up getting him to his feet, but MacDonald picked apart Fitch, ate the occasional leg kick, but Fitch scored a huge takedown. Round 2, Fitch came right out, took down MacDonald, whole round stayed there. Fitch threw an ill-advised kick that got him taken down and didn't really do enough to sway the round. Fitch dragged down MacDonald in round 3, started to throw elbows, and at this point, I'm like, man, Rory MacDonald is just not the dude we thought he was. And he confirmed it after the fight. Zahabi had no sense of urgency in that corner, which is shocking to me. Round 4, MacDonald cracked Fitch and hurt him. I thought he was going to finish him. Fitch begged for a takedown, but ate a lot of punishment before he got it. I had MacDonald winning that round. Round 5, I had it Fitch. Here's how it ends up. Majority draw. 2 fights or 2 cards with a draw, 1 with John Fitch. So Rory MacDonald wins on no scorecards, but because of the rules of the tournament, if it's a majority draw, he retains and advances. I think that in the case of a majority draw, the person who won on 1 scorecard should win the fight. I think that's how it should play out. I don't think it should be, oh, if you get 2 draws, it should outweigh the winner. I think whoever wins on the most scorecards should be the victor. Whether it be 1, 2, or 3 scorecards. That's how it should be. John Fitch won this fight. And it pains me to say that because this fight sucked. And John Fitch was a boring fight. Great interview, boring fight. James Lynch interviewed him months ago, and he said that he cut the dicks off of all of his LJN wrestling figures when he found out that wrestling was fake. Then he looked at him and said, "You're not man," and sliced up their rubber dicks, which I did never know they had. Great interview. Terrible fight. John Fitch on arguably the greatest run of his career. But I don't know that he is exactly friendly for Neiman Gracie to fight. I think that John Fitch would grind the shit out of Neiman Gracie. And why do I think that? Well, I don't know. Maybe it's because Royce Gracie hit the bricks when he got a taste of wrestling in America. He just didn't know that Kazushi Sakuraba was waiting for him in Japan. Didn't know that was coming. Bloodlines run deep, my man. After the fight, Rory MacDonald, he kind of blamed Jesus for the shitty fight, didn't he? He's like, I've had a lot of influence from God, and I don't feel like I'm as violent anymore and as exciting anymore. I'm like, listen, man, if you want to blame Jesus for your terrible fight, you go ahead. I'm not going to stop you. We get all these people crediting Jesus for their wins, why not go ahead and blame Jesus for a bad one? He's due one. He's due one. He's 29 years old. But you got to remember, it's something that we hammer home, and we're going to really talk to Joe and James about this. Cage Miles. He's got 26 fights under his belt. 26 fights. And he's fought every single year since 2005. He's been fighting for 14 years. Man. Been pro since he was like a teenager, 16. He just ain't that guy. He is not that guy. I think it's amazing that he was able to beat Tyron Woodley, beat Paul Daly up real bad, beat Douglas Lima. That's amazing. He ain't that guy. Do I think he's going to beat Neiman Gracie? Yeah, I probably do. I do think he's going to beat Neiman Gracie. I do. I don't know how well-rounded Neiman Gracie is. I thought it was impressive that he tapped out Ed Ruth. That was really cool. That's a wrap, guys. Tune in to FightfulMMA.com. Thank you guys for joining me. Leave a thumbs up. We will be talking Bellator Europe 2 Primus versus Tim Wild. Hot dog this week. Lots of stuff to talk about. Thank you, guys. Tomorrow night on the Wrestling Channel, Crockett Cup, Impact Wrestling. We're out.